Stadium?
Harvard
Okay.
Field.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect example of some expert that can tell you that you're gonna be able to pay for this through an untested revenue source. And you're gonna be able to build it for X amount of dollars. The X amount of dollars will be more, the revenue source is very small. The people who pick up the tab is us. I will point to, and I'd like to know where Mr. Joe Atkins is supposed to be here
Well,
tonight.
and I'm glad you brought that up. He actually is in a committee here.
No,
got
he
called
is,
back
and
into
I'm trying to
committee.
find out if he'd be here, if you alluded to the fact that he might. Anyway, he built amenities in our city, public private partnerships, that were gonna generate revenue, and they were gonna pay for all the things in our city. And we paid to the tune of over $1 million a year out of our funds so that these things could be built. And they are competing with like a Lifetime Fitness, that would be a for-profit organization. And that's what I'm talking about when I say private-public partnership. You're taking things out of the private, even EDAs, Economic Development Authorities, trying to manipulate the marketplace for our benefit. Please stop. Stop. People will find a way to do it, whether it's through nonprofit, whether it's cancer. I do not need the state of Minnesota to give my money to cancer research. If I want it to go to cancer research, I will write out a check. There are places for that. And you guys you got your fingers in so many different things, and yet you steal the money out of the piggy banks of children to pay for stadiums. We have a bridge that you've been working on building in Wisconsin for how many decades? And now you're trying to figure out how you're gonna pay for it now that you got it approved? This is, it's the spend then tax thing that has to stop. Why not a moratorium until you figure out where your feet are?
Spend, it's time we start using the word spend again versus
Yeah.
investment.
No kidding.
We are spending money as a state. There's no doubt about it, and we spend a lot of it. And it's gonna continue, and I see you, Peter, I'll just one moment. It's gonna continue. Our job at the legislature has to be to continue down a path that's better for Minnesota, because the path we've been down has not been effective. And there are, and I really appreciate, I think there are examples of boondoggles, you know, that you bring up, but I don't think that they're all a waste. And I think that our job needs to be smarter about those things, to be less vain about some of those things. You know, I think that anybody can get their great idea for a pet project and want to take it down a path. Our job needs to be to start talking about what value Minnesotans get. And I'll tell you that there's times that we haven't gotten value for our dollars, but there's times that we have. And you talked about cancer research, and the state shouldn't be involved in cancer research. I'm the wife of a cancer survivor. My husband survived a cancer that 5 years before he got it was a fatal cancer. And because of the dollars that were spent in the public sector and the dollars that were spent in the private sector, I have a spouse today. And so there are times when our dollars together do a lot better than our dollars do separately. Our job, I think, needs to be to do it smart, because there are dollars. And we as people in government are stewards of those dollars. And I believe strongly that we have to answer to you for the way that those dollars are spent. And when we do it wrong, we need to learn from our mistakes and not try to hide.
I'm the father of a cancer survivor, and we went through 3 years of chemotherapy. And because of all this government interference in our healthcare system.
Peter, I'm sorry, he had his hand up first, so I'm going to let him go ahead and.
So I asked a question on the card, but this is how we're doing it. I want to throw my 2 cents in too.
Okay.
I think we've all come across things in government that have been wastes, but for the most part, I can't imagine that people in the legislature just take our dollars and flush them down the toilet. So unless we're going to stop building bridges, unless we're going to stop building bridges and roads and funding our schools and funding cancer research, I really, really hope that we stop the cuts that we've been seeing for the last decade. And to get back to the AAA status that we were at, we start spending money again on things that
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Cool. At least give us a number. This year's budget proposed, general fund total budget number versus the last biennium's total budget number. My understanding is 38 million now, or almost 38 million. The last biennium was 35 million. There's $3 billion more spending in this next biennium. Some of it's to pay back the schools, but there's at least My understanding, I read Dayton's proposed budget for a couple hours today, it was very complicated. My understanding, there's at least 1.6 billion or more in increased
Yes.
spending. There's not a single cut
You go back.
in
to
the
last
budget,
time, you're
none,
gonna reduce
zero.
the
Okay,
increase.
one thing
No
I
cuts.
wanna say, it's,
2.7.
again, and we're a community and we're neighbors, and I think our job is to try to be respectful of each other and respectful of this process, and you got your question out, and we'll answer it. I will challenge you on the fact that there's no cuts in our state budget, because I actually sat and went through the Department of Human Services budget.
What is
And-
the overall budget?
Overall.
Overall.
Well.
2.7 billion
Let
higher.
people answer the
She's
question.
not answering it. Overall budget.
You interrupted
Take 1
her.
second, 1 second. You know the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to finish your comment?
I do. And that's actually something that I'm happy to be able to bring back to you all, is getting to go through line by line just one section of the state budget. There is savings there are cost cuts being there, and there's very often an idea that we're not seeing cuts in our state budget, and we are. And in fact, some of our cuts have had pretty they're ending up costing our state government more, or our county governments more, and so our job is to kind of put things back in line a little bit better, so.
So Russ gave you
Give
the
us our-
numbers, but I don't know that it necessarily like Emily's players, I'll go for it. 'Cause
Yeah.
You'd like the numbers, sensibly? Because that's sort of how we keep track. In 2012 and 13, total expenditures and transfers were estimated at $35.2 billion. In 2014 and 15, based upon the governor's recs, they're at $37.8 billion, a growth of $2.6 billion. Now, so those are the numbers. Now, there's always a story behind the numbers, which is what I was trying to talk about before, because the story behind the numbers is, well, if you can manage to get past your debt service at $414 million in this current finance, good deal, take it. Problem is, we sold off about 20 years of tobacco revenues in order to pay off our debt service, to artificially lower our spending in 12 and 13. That's a good deal, but if you want to buy in a comparison, well, it looks like we just went through the roof in our debt service payments. There's stories like that throughout, which is why I tried to talk at the beginning. I've been around this for a while. It's hard to get at. I don't want to make it mysterious, it's there. But there's usually an explanation behind it. It's not like people are trying to pull the wool over your head. It's the fact that healthcare costs are growing because we have more elderly, and those tend to be expensive, or because disabled kids cost a lot, or because we're trying to cover more people and avoid healthcare costs down the road. That's where most of the growth, buying it, rebuying it, in addition to the $1.1 billion that the governor recommended spending. And that 1.1 that I talked about, jobs and education.
Good.
Yeah,
So there's a
basically,
net,
that's where it's at.
a net $1.1 billion increase. is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Okay. There's a number, folks.
Yeah. Mhm.
I have a question for Laura. Laura,
Could
you're-
you write your question on the card, sir, because
Well,
I know that
no, I
there's still
can't,
a
because-
number of people.
why is your husband's cancer more important than my daughter's cancer? Why?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Can you show an inch of respect, sir?
You were not gonna dictate to us, and yet you filibuster and you don't answer every question.
You're
I can't believe that.
Sit down.
That's despicable.
No, his daughter is as important as her husband.
Then write it down on the card.
No,
That's all we're asking.
Maybe his explanation of where the money
everyone.
came from is valid. Maybe it's something
It
she
is
can
valid,
help
and
us
I'd be
with.
happy to
Let's
talk
let
to you.
her
Interrupting her every single
What we're
question
trying
is
to
not
do is
valid.
make sure that everybody in the room gets heard, and that's why we're doing it on cards, because very often when we just.
Why don't you put your answers on cards and we'll
That's
speak our
helpful.
questions.
That's really helpful.
So one of the questions is, what is the projected revenue forecast from the increased sales tax?
When you increase sales tax. Oh, by the way, while I'm looking up that, $318 million is the question of the corporate loophole and the impact. So basically, it reduces the corporate income tax rate and raises about the same amount because it's ending the FLCs and other things like
So
that.
there's 318 million in a loophole?
Basically, the 318 was the figure for the corporate income tax reduction. It's within
Oh.
$10 million.